The charge is treason. The sentence is death. The words spoken in the cold monotone of an imperial adjudicator, sliced through the sterile air like a blade. No inflection, no hesitation, no mercy. The tribunal chamber was suffocating in its artificial stillness. No murmurs, no gasps, not even the scrape of shifting robes, just the unbearable weight of silence, heavy as a tomb. The child in the center of the chamber barely stood as high as the podium before him. His small fingers clutched the edge, knuckles pale, shoulders drawn in like a wounded animal. He didn't understand. How could he? A boy of 10 standing trial before men who had forgotten the meaning of justice. The judges loomed in their high-backed seats, their ceremonial robes pooling like oil around them. Their faces were carved from stone, their eyes dull with apathy. The one in the middle, an old Vordal with wrinkled blue skin, adjusted his data slate and continued as though reading a weather report. Let the sentence be carried out immediately. A sharp, mechanical whine filled the room. The executioner, a faceless enforcer clad in obsidian armor, stepped forward, activating the energy field that would disintegrate the boy where he stood. Darius Kordak's breath hitched. His eyes darted to the only face in the chamber that mattered. The one beyond the thick security glass, the one the Empire had deliberately barred from the trial. His father, Darius Kordak, restrained by 2 guards, fought against them with the strength of a man who had torn through battlefields. His muscles coiled, veins bulging against his skin, but the steel grips on his arms held firm. His jaw was clenched so tight it could have cracked teeth. "You don't have to do this," he snarled, through gritted teeth. "He's just a child." The adjudicator did not acknowledge him. The enforcer raised his hand. The field hummed to life, shifting from invisible to a shimmering cage of pale blue light. Elias flinched, his body frozen with the knowledge that there was nowhere to run. His lip trembled, his knees knocked together, but his eyes never left his father. And then, "I'm not afraid, Dad," a whisper, barely audible, yet it shattered Darius more than any weapon ever had. The enforcer's fingers curled into a fist. The energy field pulsed. The boy disintegrated into nothingness. No scream, no sound, just empty air, where a life had stood. Darius stopped struggling. For the first time in his life, his body refused to move. His mind refused to process what his eyes had just witnessed. His breath came sharp and uneven, like glass scraping his lungs. The guards released him, thinking he was broken. He wasn't. He was gone. A shadow of what he had been, a husk where a father had stood, a whisper of death waiting to be unleashed. The next night, a man vanished and a storm was born. The Empire assumed grief had consumed him. They assumed wrong. Within hours of his disappearance, the first body was found, a bureaucrat, suffocated in his own quarters, his security measures overridden with military-grade encryption that no one should have been able to access. By sunrise, a captain from the tribunal's security team was discovered inside his own hovercraft, throat slashed, his command codes missing. By midday, a military logistics hub mysteriously overloaded, its fuel depots erupting into towering infernos, taking an entire fleet's supply chain with them. The Empire took notice. Too late, they issued alerts, they ordered searches. But Darius Kordak had learned war from the best. More than that, he had taught it. He didn't fight as a soldier anymore. He fought as a ghost. By the end of the first week, Imperial officers stopped traveling alone. By the second, they started sleeping in reinforced bunkers. By the third, their nightmares had a name. In a fortified Imperial compound, deep within the planetary capital, the governor of the Helion sector paced his chambers, hands clammy, nerves unraveling. 3 of his highest-ranking military advisors sat before him, sweat lining their collars. They had never feared one man before. "I want him dead," the governor's voice cracked as he slammed his fist onto the table. "I don't care how. He is one man, one, and he is making us look like cowards." The lead security officer, a grizzled veteran named Straven Cull, swallowed hard. "Sir, it's not that simple." The governor turned on him, eyes bloodshot. "Then make it simple. He's a man with no army, no fleet. He should not be capable of this." Straven hesitated. Then quietly, "You don't know who he is, do you?" The governor's glare deepened. Straven licked his lips. "Darius Kordak, former high command. one of the minds behind the Echelon Wars, designed the long-range assault tactics that broke the Nera rebellion, led the orbital siege of Tovik 9, destroyed an entire fleet with half the ships. The governor's breath shuddered. "And you think we can hunt this man?" A sharp beep interrupted them. A security officer rushed into the chamber, face pale. "Sir, we have a breach." The lights cut out. The room fell into instant blackness. A single transmission hijacked the central hollow feed. A familiar face, a pair of cold, unreadable eyes. Darius Kordak. The governor stumbled back, his pulse slamming in his throat. "You took my son." Kordak's voice was steady, calm, lethal. "Now I take everything." The hollow feed cut off. A distant explosion rumbled through the city. Then another, and another. One by one, the Empire's strongholds began to burn. The city burned. Orange light from the raging infernos licked the sky, curling into thick plumes of black that clawed their way through the capital's towering structures. Emergency sirens wailed across the sector. A desperate chorus of disarray. Civilians cowered in their homes, barricading doors against a terror they couldn't see but felt pressing down on them like an iron weight. Darius Kordak stood atop the skeletal remains of an obliterated watchtower, his silhouette lost against the storm of destruction he had set into motion. Below, soldiers scrambled like insects beneath the crackling wreckage of their own arrogance. The air, thick with the tang of burning metal and scorched circuits, stung his throat as he exhaled slowly, watching the panic unfold. He was just getting started. Kordak turned away, his boots crunching over the fractured steel beams that once held Imperial banners. He spoke without looking. "Tell me the damage." A figure emerged from the shadows. Varric Soltran, former intelligence officer, now the unseen hand behind Kordak's warpath. He moved with the quiet efficiency of a man who had spent years threading through the Empire's secrets, a predator accustomed to lurking beneath their noses. "Sector defense grid is offline," Varric said, eyes reflecting the burning cityscape below. "We infiltrated the security relays an hour before detonation. Their anti-air batteries are blind. They're deaf on long-range comms. We severed supply chains across 5 regions, fuel reserves, weapons depots, fleet refueling stations. The system is choking on its own infrastructure." Kordak gave a slow nod, scanning the horizon. From here he could see Imperial enforcers trying to establish order, blocking streets, securing escape routes, but it was useless. The chaos was alive, an organism that had been waiting to tear free. Civilians weren't just hiding anymore. Some had taken up arms. The flames had touched something deep, something buried beneath decades of subjugation. "Their response?" Kordak asked. Varric smirked, confused, fractured. "They weren't expecting an invisible war. Their leadership is arguing over who has authority to counterattack. Orders are clashing. Some want immediate suppression, others want a retreat. A few are still trying to convince themselves this is an isolated insurgency." Kordak let that settle, inhaling the scent of melted durasteel, of shattered certainty. "They'll regroup soon. We hit them again before they do." Varric studied him. "You already have a target." Kordak turned, his expression unreadable. "Warden Stravik Null." Varric's amusement vanished. "The prison director." Kordak's eyes darkened. He was the one who signed off on the executions. Not just Elias, hundreds more. He ordered children to be erased without hesitation. He exhaled sharply, the words cutting like steel in his throat. "I want him." Varric's lips pressed together. "The Imperial black site. That's a fortified nightmare, Kordak. Maximum security, underground, no recorded schematics, and the warden operates with full clearance. It's a coffin for anyone who steps inside uninvited." Kordak's voice was quiet. "Then we don't go in uninvited." Varric let out a slow breath, then activated his wrist console. A shifting holographic layout of the unknown facility projected between them. "This is all we could recover. The black site doesn't exist in standard archives. It runs off an independent power grid, no external transmissions, no known access points except through scheduled prisoner transfers." Kordak's gaze sharpened. "Then that's how we walk in." 6 hours later, an unmarked Imperial transport craft descended through the smog-laced clouds of an abandoned industrial district. The vehicle, stripped of insignia, bore the false identification of a prison transfer unit, a fabrication fed directly into Imperial records hours before. Inside, Kordak adjusted the heavy cuffs around his wrists. They were for show. The guard uniform he wore was already digging into his shoulders, its tight weave rough against his skin. He flexed his fingers, rolling out the tension, as he caught Varric's gaze across from him. "You don't look like a prisoner," Varric muttered, disguised in full Imperial armor. Kordak let a dry smile flicker. "Good thing I'm not one." The moment the craft docked, the ramp hissed open. Imperial guards, unaware of the deception, moved forward, rifles lowered but ready. A uniformed officer scanned the transfer manifest, brow furrowing slightly. "We weren't expecting an unscheduled prisoner." Varric, playing his role, handed over the falsified orders. "Direct order from high command. Prisoner flagged as high risk. Immediate transfer authorized under Warden Null's authority." The officer frowned. "That doesn't sound right. I should confirm." Kordak's hands shot up, swift, calculated. The moment the officer's hand brushed his comms, he twisted sharply, snapping the man's wrist before slamming his elbow into his throat. The guard collapsed, choking. Before his comrades could react, two silenced shots dropped them where they stood. Varric exhaled. So much for subtlety. Kordak was already moving. "Get inside before they realize something's wrong." The security checkpoint was breached in seconds. Their insertion into the facility was surgical, silent eliminations, no alarms, no bodies left behind in open sight. They wove through the labyrinth of corridors, bypassing biometric scanners with stolen credentials, slipping past automated sentries that patrolled with mechanical lethargy. The weight of the prison bore down on them. The walls, reinforced with layers of dull metallic plating, seemed to swallow sound, making every breath feel like a trespass. The air carried a sterile chill, thick with the unspoken presence of those who had entered but never left. Then they reached the core of the black site, a heavily guarded chamber, the warden's control center. Kordak motioned to Varric, "Lock down exits." "We cut him off from reinforcements." Varric vanished down an adjoining corridor, his movements as fluid as shadow. Kordak stepped into the control room. Warden Stravik Null was waiting for him. The man had the sunken, pale look of someone who thrived in places without windows. His uniform was pristine, untouched by the suffering he dictated. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't call for security. He merely regarded Kordak with a slow, almost amused tilt of his head. "You've come a long way," Null mused, voice carrying the weight of knowing he had been expected. "For vengeance, I assume." Kordak leveled his gaze. "For something bigger." Null chuckled. "That's where you're wrong." With a flick of his wrist, he activated the monitors around them. Dozens of live feeds flickered to life, each displaying a different prisoner. Malnourished, broken, stripped of names and purpose. Kordak's stomach turned cold. "This is bigger than you," Null continued, voice dripping with satisfaction. "And you've barely begun to understand." Something in his tone sent a crackling ember of unease down Kordak's spine. Something wasn't right. Null leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Welcome to the real war." And then the facility went into lockdown. The doors slammed shut with a metallic finality, and the security lockdown snapped into place. Heavy blast shields sealed every exit. The steady drone of the facility's ventilation system shifted, a barely perceptible change. Then came the hiss of something being pumped through the ducts. A trap. Kordak moved. Fast. He drove his boot into Null's chest, sending the warden crashing against the console. Monitors flickered, crackling as control inputs were overridden. Sirens blared through the facility, red warning lights flashing like arterial bursts against the walls. Varric's voice crackled through the comm. "Kordak, they've sealed the place. You need to move." Kordak grabbed Null by the collar, slamming him against the console, his grip iron around the man's throat. "What did you do?" Null coughed, lips twitching in something that might have been amusement. "You really think this was about you?" The words carried a certainty that sent a ripple of unease down Kordak's spine. The screens above them flickered again. Live feeds shifted, no longer showing the facility's prisoners. Instead, they displayed military transmission logs. Messages encoded and scrambled, but not enough to mask what they meant. Varric swore over the comm. "Kordak, that's not just a prison manifest. Those are deployment orders. Coordinates. There's something bigger happening." Kordak didn't need the translation. He could read war when it was in front of him. These weren't just random executions. This was a purge. Systematic. Targeted. Entire sectors flagged for elimination. His fingers tightened around Noel's throat. You weren't just erasing prisoners, you were erasing bloodlines. Noel's grin was razor thin. Now you're starting to understand. Kordak drove his fist into the warden's jaw. Bone cracked under his knuckles, sending Noel sprawling onto the floor. He didn't wait for him to recover. He turned to the console, fingers moving swiftly across the input commands. He needed access, needed names. The system fought him, but not fast enough. Files unlocked, records of thousands, hundreds of thousands, not just prisoners, civilians, former military, defectors, their families, entire lineages marked for extermination. This wasn't about stamping out rebellion. This was about eliminating the future before it could fight back. A shiver of realization cut through him like cold steel. Elias was never meant to be an example. His son's death was part of something far larger. Varric's voice came sharp over the comm. Kordak, whatever you're doing, finish it fast. We've got incoming. Kordak accessed the mainframe and began a full data dump. The transfer bar crawled forward, agonizingly slow. The information was too heavy, the security layers too dense. He needed time. Noel groaned, shifting on the floor, blood smeared along his chin. You think you can stop it? The warden's words were hoarse, but laced with something unnerving. This is already in motion. You're just a relic of a war you already lost. Kordak didn't respond. Then the power grid surged. The lights flickered, then cut out entirely. For 3 heartbeats, the facility was nothing but blackness. Then emergency lighting pulsed alive, casting the world in ghostly blues and whites. The screens above him went dead. The transfer bar froze, failed. They were cutting him out. The floor trembled underfoot. Distant explosions rippled through the lower levels. The Empire wasn't just coming for them. They were erasing the facility itself. Kordak pivoted, hauling Noel up by his collar. Where's the hard storage? The warden let out a breathless laugh, streaks of red smearing his teeth. Burning. Kordak struck him again, this time with the edge of his rifle. Noel slumped, dazed. Varric's voice came sharp. They're deploying heavy assault units, Kordak. We need a way out, now. The walls shuddered again, this time from a controlled demolition charge. The Empire wasn't sending soldiers to reclaim the facility, they were burying it. Kordak slung his rifle over his shoulder and grabbed Noel. Then we drag the bastard out of here and make him talk somewhere else. He tore into the hallway, boots slamming against the steel flooring. Varric met him at the corridor junction, sidearm raised. I counted 4 teams descending into the main levels, heavily armored. No chance at a firefight. Kordak didn't slow. Then we don't fight. We use their own exit. Varric kept pace. You're assuming there is one. Kordak smirked, but there was no humor in it. The Empire doesn't build prisons without an escape for its own. They pushed through a secondary passage, ducking beneath exposed conduits as flames billowed in the distance. The facility was collapsing in sections, one at a time, a controlled purge. They had minutes. Noel groaned in Kordak's grip, half-conscious. His voice cracked. You still think this ends with me? Kordak didn't even glance at him. No, he muttered. But it starts with you. Then they saw it. A docking bay, hidden beneath retractable plating. 2 Imperial gunships sat powered down, engines cold. The escape route was real. Move, Kordak ordered. They sprinted across the open floor. The moment they reached the ship, fire tore through the space they had just occupied. Impact tremors rattled the structure. The enemy had breached. Varric dove into the cockpit, systems flickering to life under his hands. Kordak tossed Noel into the cargo hold and secured the restraints. The warden was barely conscious, but his lips curled weakly. You think you made it out, but you're already too late. Kordak strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat as Varric launched them into the abyss. The burning wreckage of the facility fell away beneath them. The moment they cleared orbit, long-range scanners picked up something that turned Kordak's blood ice cold. Imperial fleet movements, massive, coordinated, not just one system, not just rebels. Entire planets were being strategically isolated. The genetic purge wasn't just happening here, it had already begun everywhere. Kordak exhaled slowly, gaze locked on the hollow display. We need to get to our contacts in the outer colonies, now. Varric nodded, fingers flying over the controls. We'll get answers. Kordak leaned back, hands clenched into fists. The Empire had drawn first blood. Now he was going to drown them in it. The stars blurred into streaks of cold light as the stolen Imperial gunship tore through the void. Kordak sat rigid in the co-pilot's seat, the weight of what he had uncovered pressing against his chest like an iron vice. His gaze remained locked on the hollow display, where Imperial fleet movements painted a gruesome tapestry of silent genocide. It wasn't just isolated strikes. Entire planetary systems were being systematically purged. No war declarations, no propaganda, just execution orders marked with cold efficiency. Varric kept his focus on the controls, his jaw clenched, his fingers tightening around the throttle as he pushed the ship through calculated micro-jumps. They had to move fast. Every second spent in Imperial space was another step toward death. From the cargo hold, a weak, ragged laugh drifted through the comms. You really think you can stop it? Kordak exhaled sharply, then stood making his way toward the restrained figure of Warden Stravik Knoll. The man sat slumped against the steel wall, his wrists bound in reinforced cuffs, his lips split from the earlier beating. Blood crusted along his temple, but his eyes gleamed with something sinister, not fear but certainty. Kordak crouched in front of him, voice dangerously low. Tell me where the command orders are coming from. Knoll chuckled, shifting slightly against his restraints. It won't matter. The board has already been set. The pieces are moving. You think because you tore down one prison, you've changed the war. Kordak leaned closer, his fingers curling into the fabric of the warden's collar. I don't care about the war. His tone was ice. I care about ending the people responsible for my son. Knoll's lips twitched. Then you're hunting ghosts. Varric's voice cut through the ship's comms. Approaching the outer colonies. We're being hailed. Kordak exhaled, his grip loosening as he stood. Who? Varric hesitated. An old name, Jex Arvad. A shadow passed over Kordak's expression. Warden Knoll's smile widened. Ah. Kordak turned sharply, his fists tightening. What do you know? Knoll shifted, the restraints clinking against his movements. Jex always had a hand in things bigger than himself. He had ambitions, and he was never particularly loyal to anyone but his own survival. His voice dropped to a near whisper. You'll see soon enough. Kordak didn't trust it, but they needed answers. Varric engaged the ship's comms, and a fractured transmission came through. Kordak, if you're hearing this, you already know you're chasing a corpse of an empire, but if you want to know the real reason behind their purges, meet me at these coordinates, and come alone. The message ended. A set of grid points appeared on the nav screen. Varric exhaled, rubbing his temple. You know this is a trap, right? Kordak didn't move for a long moment, then set course. Varric let out a soft curse under his breath, but didn't argue. The ship veered off course, slipping through the darkness toward whatever Jex Arvad had planned. The meeting point was a dead station on the edge of a dying star. The outpost had once been a fueling station, but its spires were rusted, its lights long extinguished. A corpse of steel, drifting between the crushing pull of gravity and the slow decay of time. Kordak disembarked first, his boots hitting the grated floor of the docking bay with measured weight. Varric stayed behind in the ship, keeping the weapons online in case this turned into an ambush. The silence in the station wasn't natural, it was waiting. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows. Jex Arvad still carried himself like a man who belonged at the center of power, but the years had carved deeper lines into his face. His hair, once slick and well-kept, was now threaded with silver. He wore a reinforced coat, something a man wore when he expected to be shot at. Kordak didn't slow talk. Jex smirked. Still direct, I see. No pleasantries. Kordak's expression remained stone. No time. Why is the Empire erasing entire bloodlines? Jex let out a slow breath, his smirk fading. Because they're afraid of what's coming. A pulse of tension thickened the air. Kordak didn't speak. He waited. Jex tilted his head slightly. Do you remember the old war projects? The biogenetic warfare divisions, the classified programs they buried when the conflicts ended? Kordak's stomach coiled. They were shut down, disbanded, erased. Jex's eyes gleamed with something dark. No, they weren't. Kordak felt it before he understood it. The realization, the creeping horror of what this meant. Jex continued, voice steady. The genetic modifications, the engineered bloodlines, they weren't just for experimentation. They were for something bigger. They were for the war that the Empire never wanted to admit it was preparing for. Kordak's breath slowed. A war against who? Jex's smirk was grim. Not who, what? A silence stretched between them. Then, the docking bay lights flickered violently. A distortion wave rippled through the station. Kordak immediately drew his weapon, senses on high alert. Jex exhaled. And now you're out of time. A shock wave blasted through the station, rattling the entire structure. Kordak turned sharply toward the comms. Varric, report, static. The ship's engines roared to life without them. Jex took a slow step back. Guess they decided you don't need to leave here alive. Kordak lunged. His fist connected with Jex's jaw, sending the man stumbling back against the docking console. But Jex recovered fast, wiping the blood from his lip. You think I sold you out? You have no idea what's really happening. The station trembled again. Then, something cold and alien filled the air. Not Imperial. Something else. Jex locked eyes with Kordak, something like regret flashing through them. You should have never come here. Kordak felt it then. The weight in the air. The distant, resonating presence of something wrong, something not human. And then, the shadows moved. Something emerged from the darkened corridors. Not Imperial soldiers, not bounty hunters. Something else. And for the first time in years, Darius Kordak felt something that had long been buried beneath his grief and fury. A whisper of something old, something the Empire had been hiding from the galaxy. He wasn't sure what terrified him more, that it was real, or that the Empire had been right to fear it. The docking bay trembled, a deep vibration coursing through the rusted steel beneath Kordak's boots. The shadows moved again. Not the flickering of failing lights, not the shifting of the station's fractured hull, something else, something alive. Jex Arvid had fallen back, blood streaking his jaw where Kordak's fist had connected. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't running. He was watching. Kordak had seen battlefields coated in ash, had heard the death rattle of dying fleets. But this was something his instincts rejected. A wrongness deeper than war. Then the darkness took form. It uncoiled from the corridor, like a wound bleeding into the air. A shape without definition, a body wrapped in void itself. It didn't move with the deliberate efficiency of a soldier, or the brute weight of war machines. It flowed, shifting with unnatural grace. Its edges pulsed, flickering between states, as though reality itself struggled to define it. Kordak raised his weapon. His gut screamed at him to fire. His mind whispered, don't. The thing, whatever it was, spoke first. Not in words, not in sound. It didn't speak to his ears. It spoke to the marrow in his bones. Kordak. His heart lurched. It didn't just say his name. It knew him. Kordak forced himself to stay steady, the rifle locked against his shoulder. What are you? A ripple spread through the thing, like a stone cast into a black lake. The edges of it flickered, one moment humanoid, the next something else entirely. The question is wrong. Jex exhaled sharply behind him. I told you, Kordak. This isn't about revenge anymore. Kordak didn't look at him. Then tell me what it is about. Jex's voice was quieter now. Survival. The entity took another step forward, not walking, not floating, existing where it chose to exist. Your empire burned worlds to stop us. Kordak's fingers twitched on the trigger. They did not succeed. The weight of the words settled into him like lead. This was why the Empire had purged entire bloodlines. It had nothing to do with rebellion, nothing to do with Kordak's past as a soldier. His son hadn't died because of who Kordak was. Elias had died because of what he could have become. Kordak took a slow step forward, keeping his rifle steady. If they feared you so much, why are you still here? The entity pulsed again. Because now, they are afraid of you. The docking bay groaned under another violent tremor. A fleet had arrived. Imperial, not reinforcements, a cleanup crew. They weren't here to win. They were here to erase the problem. Jex's comm device crackled. The signal barely pushed through the interference, but the words were clear enough. All assets compromised. Commence orbital sterilization. Kordak's breath slowed. Orbital sterilization. They weren't just going to bomb the station. They were going to erase everything. Jex stepped closer, wiping the blood from his lip. They know we're here, and they're about to solve their little problem the way they always do. Burn it all. Kordak turned to the entity. They're coming for you. For us. If you want to live, fight. A pulse of something like amusement passed through it. You misunderstand. It wasn't concerned. It wasn't concerned. It wasn't afraid. Kordak felt it before he saw it. A shift, a pulling, not gravity, not magnetism, something older than physics, something not meant to be understood. Jex cursed under his breath. Kordak, we need to leave, right now. The station shuddered again. The sky above them ignited. Imperial warships descended like metal gods, their weapons arming, their annihilation sequences engaging. Kordak was done running. His comm unit crackled, and then Varric's voice, sharp and alive. Kordak, you better have a damn plan, because we just hijacked their main comms. We've got the Imperial command channels wide open. Kordak's jaw tightened. A plan? No, a promise. Patch me in. Static. Then a direct link to the Imperial fleet. Kordak's voice filled the warships waiting above. This is Darius Kordak. You killed my son. You slaughtered innocent lives because you were afraid of what they might become. And now, you think you can wipe this station clean, erase the evidence of your crimes. A pause. Kordak stepped forward, his breath steady, his heartbeat an iron drum. I am still here. He let the words sink in, every syllable carving itself into the silence. You tried to kill the future. Instead, you created your own destruction. The Imperial fleet hesitated. He knew it. He could feel it. He had fought their wars, had been part of their strategies. They weren't built for uncertainty, and right now they didn't know what the hell they were dealing with. Then, the first shot fired, not from above, from the station. The entity unleashed itself. The structure groaned, metal twisting, reality bending as energy unlike anything human technology had ever seen ripped from its form and lashed into the warships above. The first cruiser gone. The second, ruptured like glass under pressure. Jex stumbled back. Oh hell. Kordak didn't move. He watched, calculated. They were losing control. Not just the Empire. Everyone. The fleet above fired everything they had. Kinetic rail charges, plasma disruptors, planetary-class warheads. The station took the hits like a god, absorbing the fury of mortals. Kordak turned to the entity. Enough. It shifted. The movement neither an agreement nor defiance. We are not your weapon. Kordak's jaw clenched. Then be your own. It understood. The next strike came not from the station, not from the Imperial ships, but from within their own fleet. A ship broke ranks. Then another. Then another. The chain of command fractured. The Empire had been built on fear. It had never learned how to fight when the fear turned on them. Kordak turned away from the burning sky. Varric. Extraction. Now. Varric's ship cut through the debris field, engines burning hot. Kordak stepped forward, Jex hesitating behind him. The entity watched them leave. It did not speak. It did not stop them. The battle raged behind them, but the war was already over. The Empire had wanted to erase the future. Instead, they unleashed the very thing they feared, and Darius Kordak had made sure they would never escape it. He had come for revenge. Instead, he had rewritten the fate of the galaxy.